You have absolutely no rights here anymore, Corinne. Your brother is moving in today, and family shares everything, my mother smirked. Her arms crossed tightly over her chest as my father drilled a brand new heavy metal deadbolt into the grand mahogany front door of the $2.2 million coastal estate my grandmother had just left me. He did not even look at me. He just kept drilling, completely shredding the antique brass fixtures that had been there since I was a little girl. Declan, my 28-year-old brother, was hauling heavy cardboard boxes from a rented moving truck straight onto my pristine front lawn. They truly believed they could just steal it in broad daylight. They thought I would submit and surrender like I always did to keep the peace. They thought I was easy prey. They were absolutely wrong. Thank you for watching this video. Before I take you back there, do me one small favor. Take a second to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. It helps more than you know. My name is Corinne. I am 31 years old. I work as a pediatric physical therapist, spending my long days helping disabled children learn to walk, while dragging around $80,000 of federal student loan debt on my own exhausted shoulders. For my entire life, I was the designated footstool in my family. I was the reliable, invisible workhorse they cheerfully stepped on to elevate my older brother. Declan was the golden child. He was the unquestioned royalty of our household. He had never held a real job for more than 3 months, bouncing from one failed technology startup to another, calling himself a brilliant visionary while living entirely off my parents' bank accounts. I drove a 15-year-old sedan with a failing transmission and rusted doors. Declan drove a luxury sports utility vehicle my parents leased for him as a reward for simply existing and breathing their air. Declan is the visionary Corinne. You are just the foundation, my father would say over and over every single time I asked for even a fraction of the emotional or financial support they constantly showered on him. That was their favorite phrase to keep me in my place. The foundation. The safety net. The backup plan. But my grandmother, Blythe, saw exactly what they were doing. She was a retired senior bank auditor. She had spent 40 years tracking missing pennies in massive corporate ledgers. She was meticulous, sharp, and profoundly observant. When her physical health began to rapidly decline, my parents suddenly became very busy with their own lives. They had expensive vacations to take, elite social events to attend, and Declan's fragile ego to constantly nurture. They visited her exactly twice a year, for 1 hour at a time, always making sure to loudly complain about the highway traffic. I was the one who quietly moved my things into her small spare bedroom. For 4 agonizing, beautiful years, I bathed her. I managed her complex daily medication schedules. I sat in freezing cold hospital waiting rooms at 3 in the morning. I held her fragile, paper-thin hands as her memory sometimes faded, grounding her firmly in reality. I loved her with my entire soul, and I never asked her for a single dime. You cannot pour from an empty cup, but a toxic family will gladly grind your empty cup into sheer dust, just to see if there is one last drop of water left inside. When Grandma Blythe finally passed away on a rainy Tuesday morning, my parents wept dramatically at the funeral, performing their grief for the extended relatives. Declan showed up 30 minutes late, smelling heavily of alcohol, and slept through the entire eulogy. I sat completely silent, watching their theatrical performance with a hollow chest. 3 days later, we were all formally summoned to the downtown office of Attorney Vance. He was a stern, uncompromising man in his early 60s who had managed my grandmother's legal affairs for over a decade. My mother sat in the office with perfect posture, already mentally spending the inheritance she felt entitled to. My father tapped his leather shoe impatiently against the floorboard. Declan was mindlessly scrolling on his cellular phone. Attorney Vance opened the heavy leather folder on his oak desk. He began to read. The vintage watch collection, valued at roughly $15,000, was left to Declan. My mother leaned forward, eagerly waiting for the rest of his kingdom to be handed over. It never came. I leave my primary residence located in Monterey, and all furnishings therein, to my granddaughter Corinne, to be hers solely and completely, Attorney Vance read aloud, his deep voice echoing in the absolutely silent room. Furthermore, I leave the entirety of my remaining monetary assets, totaling exactly $500,000, to Corinne. The silence completely shattered. My mother's perfectly curated facade crumbled into dust in a fraction of a second. The color completely drained from her face. "This is a mistake," my mother snapped. My mother would never leave the family estate to just one person, my father yelled, abruptly standing up from his expensive leather chair. "I assure you, the will was executed with full mental capacity and is entirely ironclad," Attorney Vance stated with icy calm, not even blinking at their sudden outrage. My mother turned her predatory gaze directly toward me. "You poisoned her against us. You manipulated a sick, dying woman while we were completely unaware." I looked right back at her, entirely unfazed. "I took care of her." They stormed out of the legal office, violently slamming the heavy wooden door and dragging Declan behind them. Little did I know, they were already plotting to rip my empire down before I could even step foot inside. For 3 entire weeks, they went completely silent. There were no angry phone calls. There were no manipulative text messages. There were no passive-aggressive invitations to Sunday dinner. I honestly thought the brutal war was over. I gave the required legal notice at my cramped, moldy apartment and began packing my entire life into cardboard boxes, ready to finally move into the stunning Monterey estate and start breathing fresh air. Then, on a quiet Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was a text message from my mother. "We are clearing out the estate this weekend. Declan is moving in on Sunday. You can come pick up a few small mementos if you want to keep them." My blood ran completely cold. I dialed her phone number immediately. "What exactly are you talking about?" I asked. "Family shares everything, Corinne," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness and condescension. "Your brother needs this beautiful space more than you do. He is starting a brand new company. You already have a perfectly fine apartment." "The house was legally left to me," I said quietly. My father got on the other line. "You are not going to be a selfish brat about this. We are having the property title transferred to Declan. Family property strictly belongs to the family. You have no rights here anymore." He hung up the phone. The sheer audacity was utterly suffocating. They truly thought I was still the obedient footstool. They thought I would just cry in my bedroom and surrender my future to them. But the icy grip of reality had finally hardened my spine. I called Attorney Vance immediately. He listened to my entire explanation without interrupting once. Then he gave me strict, explicit legal instructions. The trap was finally set. The very next morning, I drove the 2 hours up the winding coast to Monterey. When I pulled my rusted vehicle onto the quiet, tree-lined street, my heart hammered violently against my ribs. A massive commercial moving truck was parked illegally on my front lawn. I walked slowly up the stone pathway. My father was standing on the front porch, armed with a heavy-duty power drill, completely destroying the antique locks on the mahogany door. My mother was standing on the grass directing Declan, who was lazily carrying boxes of expensive sneakers into my formal living room. "What exactly do you think you are doing?" I asked, my voice cutting through the morning fog. That is when my mother smirked and delivered her delusional verdict. "You have absolutely no rights here anymore. Your brother is moving in today, and family shares everything. You are actively changing the locks on my private property," I stated. "You have no rights here anymore," my father yelled over the loud grinding sound of the power drill. "We are fixing your grandmother's terrible mistake." I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not beg them for mercy. I simply pulled my phone from my coat pocket and pressed a single button. I put it on speaker. "Attorney Vance. They're actively breaking into the estate," I said. "I am pulling onto your street right now, Corinne," his deep, authoritative voice resonated clearly from the speaker. "And I have already contacted the local sheriff's precinct. Have they breached the interior of the residence?" "Yes," I replied. My mother laughed, a harsh, incredibly grating sound. "You are completely bluffing. The police do not care about a petty family dispute. Exactly 10 minutes later, a marked county sheriff cruiser with flashing lights pulled aggressively into the long driveway, completely boxing in the rented moving truck. Deputy Marin, a tall, imposing woman in her late 40s, stepped out of the vehicle, resting her hand casually on her heavy utility belt. Attorney Vance parked his silver sedan right behind her cruiser, stepping out onto the concrete with a thick, genuine leather briefcase. My parents instantly shifted their entire strategy. The predators frantically tried to put on the fragile mask of innocent, misunderstood victims. "Officer, thank goodness you are finally here," my mother cried, dramatically clutching her chest. "Our daughter is having a severe mental breakdown. She is trying to violently kick her own brother out of our ancestral family home." Deputy Marin did not even blink at the theatrical display. She looked directly at Attorney Vance. Vance opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of federal and state documents. "Deputy, I am the sworn legal executor of the Blythe estate. This is the official probate court order, the authenticated property deed, and the Ironclad will. This property is solely and entirely owned by Corinne." The deputy carefully reviewed the heavy legal paperwork. The official seals of the probate court gleamed brightly in the morning sunlight. She turned slowly to my father, who was still awkwardly holding the heavy power drill. "Sir, this legal document makes your daughter the sole legal owner of this entire property," Deputy Marin said, her voice completely devoid of any warmth or sympathy. "If you do not drop that power drill right now, you will leave this property in handcuffs for felony trespassing, property damage, and breaking and entering." My father froze. The heavy drill slipped from his trembling hands, clattering loudly onto the wooden porch. "This is outright theft," my father screamed, his face turning a vibrant, alarming shade of purple. "My mother owed us this house. We took care of her for years. We are her real family." Attorney Vance adjusted his expensive glasses. He reached into his leather briefcase one final time. He did not pull out another legal statute or court injunction. He pulled out a worn, heavy leather-bound notebook. My grandmother's personal audit ledger. "Your mother anticipated this exact criminal behavior," Attorney Vance said, his voice slicing through the coastal wind like a sharpened razor. As a senior bank auditor, she kept meticulous, undeniable records of every single financial transaction in this entire family for the last 15 years. My mother stopped breathing. The victim mask completely slipped, revealing the sheer panic underneath. "In 2015, you borrowed $40,000 to cover illegal gambling debts," Vance read loudly, flipping a page. "In 2018, you took $80,000 to fund Declan's entirely failed software company. In 2021, you demanded another $130,000 to keep your own primary residence out of bank foreclosure. I have the legally binding, signed promissory notes right here in this folder." Vance looked up, staring directly into my father's utterly shattered eyes. Total amount formally borrowed from the deceased, $250,000. Total amount repaid to date, absolutely zero. The silence that followed was absolute and profound. It was the distinct sound of a toxic empire crumbling into sheer dust. "She left you nothing because you already took everything," I said, my voice completely cold. Deputy Marin stepped forward, loudly unclipping her metal handcuffs from her heavy belt. "You have exactly 5 minutes to get your personal belongings out of this house and off this private property, or you are all taking a ride to the county jail." They did not say another single word. The sheer, overwhelming humiliation crushed them entirely. Declan looked exactly like a terrified, helpless child as he scrambled to throw his expensive sneaker boxes back into the back of the moving truck. My mother stared blankly at the ground, completely drained of her usual venom and arrogance. My father could not even look me in the eye as he practically ran to the passenger seat. They climbed into the loud truck and drove away down the coastal highway, leaving absolutely nothing behind but the shattered pieces of their own unearned arrogance. 6 months later, I am completely at peace. I sit quietly on the sunny balcony of my beautiful coastal estate, listening to the gentle waves crash against the sandy shore, while they are drowning entirely in the heavy consequences of their own immense greed. I used a portion of the monetary inheritance to completely wipe out my $80,000 of student loan debt in one single payment. I invested the rest of the funds in secure federal bonds. I still work full-time as a physical therapist because I genuinely love helping my young patients heal, but I never have to worry about simply surviving ever again. My parents desperately attempted to file a civil lawsuit to legally contest the Ironclad will. It was instantly thrown out by a federal judge in less than 10 days, and they were legally ordered to pay all of my expensive attorney fees. Without my grandmother's constant money to float their luxurious lifestyle, they had to immediately downsize to a tiny, cramped apartment in the city. I heard through a distant relative that Declan is currently working the late-night drive-through window at a local fast food restaurant, finally forced to face the harsh reality of the real world. I have not spoken a single word to any of them since that morning on the porch. I have something now that no amount of their fake love or toxic approval could ever buy. I have true freedom. I am finally building my own life, and it is built on a foundation of steel. Thank you so much for letting me share my story with you. If you have ever had to cut ties with toxic family members to protect your own peace, I would love to hear your story in the comments below. Do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice served. Stay strong and see you next time.